Hey guys, it's a teenage atheist, and today I have a demonstration. It's called the dice demonstration. I've seen it a couple times on different YouTube videos, and the first time I saw it was Tracy Harris did it on the Atheist Experience show, and that's kind of where I was introduced to the demonstration, and it's a really good demonstration for simplifying and making it easier to comprehend the argument from ignorance fallacy. And basically it's just you take a dice and then you get a bag, which I don't have any bags that would work very well for this, so I just grabbed this little tin. It'll work. Just something that you can't see into that's relatively small. You don't want to be using a big shopping bag or garbage bag or anything like that. What you want to do is you want to take your bag or tin or whatever you're going to put stuff in. You're going to put one dice in it. You're going to put one dice in the tin, close it up, and it's going to be you'll see what we'll use that later in the demonstration, and then you'll be holding a dice. And if you have this with you, or you can get dice, and a Christian brings up they start talking, and they have the fallacy of the argument from ignorance. And if you don't feel like explaining it in God terms and getting it complicated, because I know that when you put stuff in the terms of religion and God, it can get complicated and confusing for people. And so using dice is a great way to simplify things and make it a lot easier to wrap your mind around. And you won't have the bias of a religious person or an atheist bias. You'll have no bias. I hope no one's biased about dice, but never know. But basically what you do is you'll say, you go up to them, or you'll be talking to them, and you'll say, okay, well, based on what you know about a regular dice, is it possible to roll a 2? And you can choose any number on the dice, it doesn't really matter, but I'll go with a 2 for this example. And they'll say, yeah, it's possible. And you could ask them, well, how do you know that? And hopefully they're going to answer something along the lines of, well, because a die has 6 sides with 6 different numbers that are numbered 1 to 6, and when you roll it, there's a possibility of any one of those 6 coming up. And there's a 2 side on here, so if I roll the dice, I might get a 2. Simple enough. And then you can ask them, okay, well, is it possible to roll a 3 or any other number on the dice that you haven't used yet, depending on what one you started with? And they'll say yes, and it'll be for the same reason. And then you say, okay, well, I can roll a 7 then, too. And hopefully, cross your fingers, they'll answer back, no, you can't. You can't do that on just one die. And you can ask them, well, why can't you? And they'll answer back, well, there are only numbers 1 through 6 on the die, so you can't possibly roll a 7. And then at this point you say, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that you have infinite number of rolls. They might answer back, oh, so you can roll again and again and then add up what you get on those, and then you might get a 7. Well, no, I don't mean, I mean that each roll is separate and it only counts for itself. You don't add them together, but you get infinite rolls. So now can I get a 7? They'll answer back, no, because each individual roll has the same possibilities as the first. And when a die only has numbers 1 through 6 on it, you can't roll a 7 no matter how many times you roll it. And then you can pick up your bag or your tin or whatever you're using and say, okay, well, I have this bag. You don't know what's in the bag, correct? And they should say, yeah, I don't know what's in it. Then you say, okay, well, I'm going to take the die and I'm going to put it inside the bag. Don't let them see what's in the bag. Now, then you'll say, now, with the contents that are in this bag, is it possible to roll an 18? You'll get varied answers, but anyone who knows what to answer or is logical, hopefully will say, I don't know, because they don't. And then when they say, I don't know, say, well, if you don't know, then it must be possible. If they're smart, they'll say, no, not necessarily. Then you can reply, oh, I forgot to tell you, whatever is in this bag, you can roll an infinite number of times. So now can I roll an 18? They say that doesn't really change anything, because what if there's only one die in there? Then no matter how many times you roll, you're still only going to get 1 through 6. And then you can answer, well, this bag is big enough to hold 3 die, and that can roll an 18, so is it possible? And they'll answer back, well, I don't know what's in the bag, so I can't say if it's possible to roll an 18. But if there was 3 die in the bag, then it would be possible. Okay, so not knowing doesn't mean that it's possible. You need information that informs you to make a justified decision on whether it's possible or not. They'll answer back, correct. And I also can't say it's impossible either. And then you can answer back and play the part of the Christian using the argument from ignorance and say, well, if it's not impossible, then it's possible. Depending on who you're talking to, they'll give varied answers on that, obviously. When Tracy Harris did it, I'm actually going to use what Matt Dohoney answered back, because I think it's the best answer you can give to that. He said, well, as a matter of what it actually is, yes, but what we believe about it and whether or not we're justified in claiming that it is possible, no. And then you can say, so somebody can say it's possible and they wouldn't be justified? They would answer, yes, that's true. Okay, well, I don't know how many of whatever's in here are actually in here, and you don't know how many are in here. I mean, there could be 1 million in here for all we know. And they'll say, well, no, there couldn't be 1 million in there. But I thought you just said you don't know how many are in here, so how can you say that? Well, assuming we are still talking about the standard size die with 6 sides, and from what I know about how big the bag or the tin actually is, and then without measuring, I can still estimate that you couldn't fit 1 million in here. Oh, okay. Well, somebody still might say that it's possible that you could roll an 18, and if they say that, then they wouldn't be justified in saying that, even though they might still say it and believe it, correct? And they'd answer back, that's correct, they wouldn't be justified in saying that, it doesn't matter what their beliefs are. At this point you say, okay, well, let me dump out the contents of the bag, and you dump them out on the table, and you show 2 die. And you say, oh, okay, so if somebody was to say that it's possible to roll an 18, they would be in fact wrong, because there's only 2 die and you can't roll an 18 with only 2. And they'll answer back, yes, they couldn't roll an 18, they would have been wrong. And you can say, and now that we know what was in the bag, it isn't a matter of them saying that you might be able to roll an 18, and they might have been wrong before. They were actually wrong even when they were saying that it was possible, because it was impossible, clearly. And that sounds to me that they're calling something impossible possible, right? And they'll say, that's correct, they called something impossible possible. Or when I say that it is not impossible, but I can't say that it's possible, even though it is clearly impossible. And Matt said, well, I reject their claim that it's possible, but that doesn't mean I'm saying that it's impossible, because I don't have enough knowledge to determine whether it's possible or not. And from everything that we knew about that situation, we really couldn't claim that it was possible or impossible. And the fact that we couldn't say that it's impossible at the time does not mean that it is valid to call an 18 roll from 2 die possible. By saying that it was possible, that means that you were in fact wrong. And that's exactly what the argument from ignorance fallacy is. And the reason why I like this demonstration so much is because it shows that, one, it shows that infinity is not always going to change the outcome of a situation, because no matter how many times you roll that die, you could do it for an infinite amount of times. But no matter what happens, you're not going to roll an 18 or you're not going to roll a 7. So just because something is infinite does not mean that it's going to change whether it's possible or it's impossible. Another reason why I like it is because the dice in the bag represent God and the religious argument from ignorance, because you don't know what's in the bag. It could be anything. It could be a chicken if you have a big enough bag. I don't think a chicken's gonna fit in my bag, but it could be anything. And since we don't know anything about the bag, you can't justify in saying that it is possible or that is impossible he exists. In order to not have any burden of proof, you actually have to say that you don't know. And that when a Christian hears you say, I don't know whether God exists or not, then they're automatically going to jump and say, oh, so that means if you don't know, then he must exist. And that's when you can explain to him why that's wrong and unjustified, as we just did with the dice experiment. And what this demonstration shows is that you can't, unless you have the evidence for it and you have knowledge about whether God exists or not, that's actually testable and can withstand the burden of proof and it can withstand peer review, then it is just like the dice inside our bag where you don't know anything about it. So it's unjustified and it's wrong to claim that it's possible or that it's impossible. Which is why if you take the position of saying that you don't know, because you don't have enough information, then that is the only justified answer that you can give, unless you have evidence that says it's possible or it's impossible. Like if my bag was clear and you could see what was in it, then it would be justified to say if it's possible or impossible. But since you don't know, the only thing you can say that is justified and is the correct answer is that I don't know. Thank you for watching on The Teenage Atheist, and stay tuned for more videos.